Thank you for coming.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Thanks everyone for coming to the session today. Hopefully you'll find it insightful. I don't want to talk at you guys for an hour, so let's make this be a collaborative discussion. Feel free to jump in with any questions, interrupt me if you have ideas you want to talk through. I'd love to have this be a collaborative hour. So before we dive into the fun stuff, I thought I'd give you a little background on Matter itself, just really briefly. So we are a full service agency. We actually brand ourselves as a digital marketing agency. So what does that mean? We offer PR, social media, creative services, and integrated marketing that helps drive value for brands. We've been around for about 16 years now. We were headquartered in the Boston area, and just last year we opened our 6th office here in Pittsburgh. So given our Boston roots, we are very tech focused, but given we've been around for 16 years, we've definitely evolved over time. We just recently last year launched our Matter Health brand. We have a lot of professional services clients, and we work a lot with manufacturing companies. So a wide array of clients and also sizes. So we go from startups all the way up to Fortune 50. We have a program that's actually called Precision, which really helps with entrepreneurs and startups. And we work on really focused PR programs for our clients, which helps kind of bring the cost down to help you guys. So without further ado, I will dive into the fun stuff. So we're here today to talk about public relations. So what is that? Public relations is the art of communicating your brand's relevancy to the court of public opinion. Or as I like to say, it's all about getting your message out in front of the right audiences through earned media. And it's really an essential part of the sales and marketing funnel. So as you see, these are the stages that you probably are familiar with. In particular, PR really falls really well into the first couple buckets, the awareness and interest part. So as I'm sure you've seen, you might be reading an article in Forbes or something and you're like, oh, that's a cool company, let them look that up. That's exactly what we're looking for with public relations in terms of awareness and interest. We're not going to be the tactic that really closes the sale for you. There's other marketing initiatives that can help with that. But we also fill in on the advocacy side as well. So if you have a customer who's really delighted, they're doing great work with you and they want to share it, that's an awesome PR tactic and something we'll get into later that the media really loves to see. Lots of people are talking about these innovative strategies, but the best way to really get coverage is if you can share an actual customer case study, and that also helps with your sales pipeline. So this is a quote that I feel like as an agency person I hear all the time. How can I get on the cover of Forbes? Or most recently, a lot of my clients have been asking me how they can get on NPR, how I built this. And it's, I want to use the conversation today to kind of talk to you about how to build that brand story that's going to get you in something like a Forbes or how I built this, and what different stories, different types of publications are looking for. And also, just helping you to understand what's going to bring the most value to the story you're trying to tell. While Forbes might seem enticing and exciting, it might not bring you the most marketing qualified leads for your company. Maybe something that's a more focused publication in an industry that you're focused on might be better. So really when disseminating news, there really are 3 primary vehicles for this. The first one is a press release, which I'm sure you guys are all familiar with. You've seen these before on the internet. You've seen them posted by your companies that you're following. The press release is really going to tell the entire story of what you're hoping to accomplish. The goal of the press release is to give the reporter all the information they need to be able to take that and write the article that they're working on. So it'll have quotes from you, it could have a quote from your customer, and includes a boilerplate, which is actually the about company information at the bottom. And it really is just a way that they can almost, seriously, we've sometimes seen them copy and paste pieces from it and pull together an article. Another thing is called a media alert, and this is more focused on the who, what, when, where, why. It's a more succinct version of a press release and really good for events and things where you're trying to drive somebody to go to get more information. And then lastly, we'll spend a good amount of time today talking about the proactive pitch. So this is something that's written for a specific person, and you're hoping to get them to come to you to get more information. It's a really tailored, nothing too sexy email that's sent to people, or it could be a phone call. Providing with them some information to pique their interest and get them to come to you to get more information. Any questions so far? Yeah?
For the proactive pitch, will that typically be tailored for kind of your different segments? Like let's say your early stage company, you have something more for the investors, you have something more for prospective customers. do you kind of segment that out, or kind of how is that typically done?
Yeah, so, and we'll get into that later. It's actually more segmented towards the type of publication you're going for.
Okay.
So like you're going to write something different and provide different information if you're targeting a Business Insider versus a TechCrunch. And that's going to be the latter part of the presentation, so we'll definitely get into that.
Thank you.
So what counts as news, and where do these fit into these buckets? Pretty much anything that you're doing within your organization could count as news, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be something that you're going to share with the media. So for example, press releases, if you have major client wins, new product announcements, new partnerships, significant hires, or if you have a combination of those things, you can bundle them up together and position them as a momentum release and share all the great stuff you've done within a specific time frame. For media alerts, I know I had mentioned these are great for events, webinars, things where you're trying to drive people to get more information at a specific time. For proactive pitching, this is something where I mentioned before, you want to pique their interest to come and get more information from you. So that could actually be thought leadership. It could be a case study where you're going to just share a few highlights and then you want to connect them with one of your customers to talk about it in greater detail. Or it could be you attended an event and you want to share what you learned with that. And then lastly, social media, we don't ever want to forget about that. It's awesome for boosting employee morale, sharing client and customer highlights. Those are nice because it's a great way you can put a quick tag on LinkedIn and they'll see that. Other companies will see that and see that you're working with those companies. Product promotions, things that are quick in a point in time. And it's really helpful for recruiting, just showcasing any kind of articles you get on there, key things that are happening in the company, just to kind of continue to show momentum. Quick hits on there. So diving into the meat of it, this is the bulk of what a PR agency works on, is basically pitching for thought leadership. Obviously, it would be awesome if we just had constant news announcements, new product wins, new clients who are willing to be mentioned, but that's not the case. And so it's up to you or somebody that you're working with to come up with a way to tie yourself to key trends that are happening in the industry. So that's really what thought leadership is, offering yourself or somebody within your company as an expert to comment on what's going on. There's 3 critical questions that need to be asked before you move forward with anything like this if you want to be successful. The first is, why now? These reporters that you're going to be potentially reaching out to receive hundreds, if not thousands of emails a day, depending on the publication. And they are so quick to delete something that is not going to be relevant to them or is not timely. So you want to make sure that you're talking about why this is of importance to them right now at this time. Otherwise, they could move forward with something that's more important and happening at this moment. What's the impact? They're not going to care unless it has some sort of impact to their readers. So make sure before you reach out to a publication, you really understand who the readership is. Looking at the advertising page to understand the key titles and people who are reading it are really important. And then lastly, what's the connection? They obviously know that you're trying to get something out of this for your own benefit. You don't want to be overly promotional, but tie it back to your company in some way and show them how what you're talking about in the industry, your tool or product or service can help. So we talked a little bit about the pitch before, but this is really the dynamics of it. Pitching is, I feel like, truly an art, and everyone does it very different. But there's some major components here that we have listed that are certainly going to be helpful in making sure that you are successful. The first thing, double and triple check their name. It's a really easy way to get yourself removed and deleted very quickly. That's definitely a no-no. Another just quick tip for that too is look them up on Twitter. Like perhaps their name is Michael, but you look them up on Twitter and they have their name listed as Mike. That's a little more personable, so go for that route. In the first line, this is where you want to hit them hard. So think about your own company pitches, your elevator pitches. You want to get to those things really quick. That's the same thing with this first line in a pitch that you're reaching out to a reporter. What are you trying to get them to cover? What are you offering them? And why is it important to them right now? The second piece is talking about how it will impact their readers and what they need to know most, why it's of importance to their readers, that kind of thing. And then lastly, you want to have a strong call to action. So think about if you've done any sales initiatives, what are you going to do at the bottom to prompt them to get them to respond to you? So one of my techniques is to say, are there any times this week that work best to discuss? And you could be offering a conversation with a subject matter expert within your organization. It could be a look for them, an opportunity for them to look at a report that you've put on, or to give them a demo of your product. So all different things, you want to make sure that it's very clear what you're offering, both in the upfront and at the bottom. And then lastly, just another small tip, a lot of reporters have parameters set up on their emails to not be able to accept attachments. So any additional details, you want to keep it very brief at the top, put them below in your signature so they can easily go there and get more information. Or if you have something that you want to pass along that's an attachment, make sure you get approval from them first before doing so. So that was a lot. Any questions about anything? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious about the order of events. If you are pitching, say, a contributed article or contributed content, do you reach out and say, I am able to create contributed content, or I have already created and you would be interested in pulling this in?
You can do both. So you absolutely can do both. If you have an idea, you can run it by them and be like, hey, I'm thinking about writing an article on X, Y, and Z. Would this be of interest to your readers? In which case they might respond and say, sure, like, would love to see it. It can be within this many words and I need it by this deadline. Another way is just to say, I wrote this article, here's a quick snapshot, and then, same kind of thing and get their interest that way. But you can do both. Any other questions? You guys are going easy on me. All right, so we got the reporter's interest, we did a briefing, or we showed him our report, and now we're waiting on coverage. And not every single piece of coverage is going to be a feature story on the front page of a major news daily. And that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing to have coverage that spans the gamut here. So these are really the three ways that we categorize coverage for our clients. The first is drumbeat coverage. So this is where you're being listed among other companies and just getting quick mentions in articles. So it could be a wrap-up of the top CMS providers and you guys are listed as a company or something like that. It could be stock or financial related news. Just really quick hits that raise awareness and relevance. High profile, these I feel like are probably the most common. Think about an article you've read recently where you've been walking through it and you've seen quotes from several different experts listed throughout. That's what this is. These really help build credibility and prominence. They can include data from you or just roundups of product announcements. And then lastly, the feature, which is obviously the holy grail. This could be a Q&A with the CEO, a company profile, a standalone piece about your customer, basically just a look how great we are kind of piece. These are very less frequent than the other ones that we're mentioning. They definitely build authority. They're great ones to promote on all your social channels. But it's really important to keep in mind all three of these because they really do have all different goals and help raise your company in different ways. So one of the things also that we hear a lot from our clients is, I got this great article in this publication, nobody called me about it to talk about my company. Yes, it's going to drive awareness, it's going to get eyeballs on your company, people might be looking at you, but it's a long game. For sure. And it also doesn't end with just getting the piece of coverage. You want to make sure that you're leveraging it appropriately with your sales professionals, your marketing teams, all that good stuff. So we have a couple things here for you to consider once you land that great article and you're wanting to share it. Obviously, making sure that you push it through all your distribution networks, email marketing, social media, all that good stuff. Attract and please stakeholders, making sure that it's in any board or investor presentations. You can have a quick logo slide with all the places that you've been featured, and then have links later as a follow-up if they're interested in seeing those. It's great for sales efforts. I worked for a brief stint at a small technology company here in the Pittsburgh area, and every Friday I would kind of package up our highlights of media, share them with the sales team so they could easily copy and paste it and share it with any companies that they were trying to nurture. It's obviously great for social. People love to see their companies highlighted from an employee perspective, and it also helps to raise credibility for you for any prospects who are keeping track of what's going on with the company. And then lastly, it helps to grow your team. So again, if you have, you can share it internally, and if there's a subject matter expert or somebody who was featured within it, give them a quick shout out in the company email that goes out, and that obviously boosts morale and gets other people excited. And they might be able to come forward and share some other ideas that they're wanting to share with the media and give you some other things to talk about. Yeah.
So when somebody sees this article, they're likely going to have a CTA of going to your website, right?
Perhaps.
What is your recommendation of getting them onto your page, or maybe you already have that, or even more so tracking engagement once they see that article?
Yeah, it's really tough because you can't, a lot of the time, the publications won't even include potentially a link to your website. So you definitely, if you get an article in a publication, certainly there's no harm in asking the reporter to add a link to your webpage. I don't know if you guys use like Google UTM parameters, but you can put those tracking devices on it so you know that it came specifically from that article. And then we talked about that. And then what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. Yeah, so you certainly can ask. No guarantees, of course, but they potentially can do that. And then as far as being able to see where it's gone from the actual publication, that's really tough. They're not going to share how many eyeballs they had on it. If you get something in like a Forbes, you can see they have the reads right there. But that's why things like this are so important, because it's trackable. In particular, if you get a new opportunity that comes through, make sure that anyone on your sales team, or if you guys are doing it, you're asking them where they came from, because they might share, oh, I saw you in this publication and I decided to reach out. That's the best way to track it. So when is the right time for public relations? Because it's not just, you can't just go about it whenever you feel like you want to. There's a lot of things that you need to have in place before doing it to be successful. In particular, you want to make sure that you have solid brand assets. So that's the typical things, like they're going to ask for a headshot, they're going to ask for a logo if you end up getting covered, those kind of things, but also making sure that you have really clear messaging. What's your brand story? What's your brand value? What are your differentiators? Making sure that you and anyone else who's going to be speaking to the publication knows those and can clearly articulate them is extremely important. I talked about spokespeople just briefly there. Again, making sure that they're up to speed on the messaging and that they're aware of the article and all that stuff in advance, so you can make sure that they're extremely successful once they get the briefing. Case studies and testimonials are huge. I'm sure you guys have heard that newsrooms are dwindling. And so more than ever, these reporters are strapped for information. Lots of people are coming to them with kind of pie-in-the-sky technologies, using lots of buzzwords. But in reality, things like the IoT or blockchain and things like that, people are actually realizing results. And so they're cutting through the BS and they want to see actual results. And so case studies and testimonials from your customers are great. That's a really tough thing to get. But once you get some customers on board and you feel like you're starting to delight them, making that ask for them to potentially be able to be used for marketing and PR efforts is huge. And then lastly, time. It takes time. We tell our clients that it takes basically 6 to 12 months before you're going to start to really see results from public relations. Coverage will obviously begin sooner, but it takes time and you want to get all those different types of coverage before you're really going to start to really grow that awareness. And one of the things that I like to mention too, if you really start to put efforts together for public relations, is don't be disheartened if you're just getting conversations with publications. We consider those really key milestones in terms of building a thorough public relations plan. And let's say you have a conversation with a Ron Miller or somebody at TechCrunch, and he doesn't end up writing, but you weren't on his radar before and you are now. He knows what you can speak to, and that means that he might come to you in the future for an opportunity or an article that he's working on that you could be a perfect fit for. So that's something I like to say just to make sure, because it can take time. And obviously those conversations aren't something that you should just toss to the side and not feel great about. And then lastly, comparison data. So if you're going to be making any claims that your company is better than somebody else, make sure you can back it up. They'll be looking for that. So that's all about telling the story. The next part we're going to dive into is actually the media landscape. Any questions around story or anything like that?
Yeah, I'll ask another. I'm also curious about whether if you have, say, an awesome CTO, who's just a really interesting guy, telling his story versus telling the or her story, or telling the company's story.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have a recommendation of just focusing on the company's story, the company making headlines, or is there a value in having a person come to the company?
No, there's absolutely value in both, and you just want to make sure that you find the right targets for each, because some reporters and publications are only going to cover the company, and then other ones will actually want to do personal profiles of people. So there's definitely value in both. And yeah, part of what we'll get into here is just making sure that you do your research on the reporter beforehand. Obviously, you guys are probably reading stuff all day, every day, so just keeping track of that, and you'll start to see similarities. Like, oh, every article that this person writes has an actual end user in it. Like, I need to make sure if I ever reach out to them that I have that. Any other questions? All right, so how do we get in front of these people? I mean, they're just like everyone else. They're normal people. Don't be intimidated by them. And you should treat them with just as much care as you would your customers. So the first thing to think about is where are they located and how do they prefer to be contacted? That's going to be kind of a tough judge on the first reach out. You know, you can certainly send them an email, but you might find that you get them to respond after you give them a call. We do a lot of stalking on Twitter to see what's going on, and some people say they like to get DMs or follow up via Twitter. So just start to pay attention to, once you start getting responses from people, maybe make an Excel document or something that keeps track of how you actually got them to respond. What information do they need to write a good piece? Again, this goes back to research, research, research. If you find the right person at a publication, they're going to want to talk to you because you've done your research and you know that it's something that they're interested in. Again, this is, you can read lots of articles. You might see that every single one has data in it. So you know to come to them with some sort of unique data set that they can use for their article. Or it might have a customer, or they might just end up using conversations with the CTO or something like that. So just making sure you do your research to understand specifically what they're looking for, what assistance you provide them in their process, who can you connect them with, what data source can you give them, and just being able to be that liaison between whatever they need and really cater to them. Because a lot of them are working on deadlines and they're going to need things quickly once they kind of actually respond to your message. And then lastly, what do they want to hear about? Make sure no jargon, make sure you're giving them exactly what they're looking for. Make sure you show that you've done your research and include that in your initial outreach. So we're going to start at the top here with the finance, business, media, and what they're looking for. One thing to consider if you're pitching a Business Insider or USA Today or something and you feel like you have really substantial news that is a good fit for them, you might want to consider what we call an exclusive. So that's where you give it to the publication beforehand and you say to them, I'm giving this to you exclusively. You guys are a great outfit, would love for you to share it. And they can either keep it as an exclusive in perpetuity, or you can give it to them as an exclusive for a day and then pitch it out more broadly to everyone else. So something to consider when you reach out to them. It can make it a little bit more enticing because everyone wants to share things first. Remember to go beyond the masthead. So the masthead is the part of the newspaper or magazine that lists all the editors that are working for the publication. But there's so many contributors and freelancers that might be a better fit for what you're trying to tell them. So like I said, you guys are obviously reading lots of articles all day, every day, I'm sure. Start to pay attention to who's writing them, and those are probably the targets that you want to go after. And they might not necessarily be an editor. They could be a freelancer, or a contributor, or just a reporter that works for the publication. Obviously, once you've identified your person, you've decided if you want to go exclusive, positioning yourself to a key trend that's happening and making sure that it's timely is very important. These publications are likely not going to write a company profile. Instead, they're going to include you in a broader trend story, so making sure that you're paying attention to what's going on and offering that expert opinion. Avoid the self-promotion and ditch the jargon. Any questions? Good.
What do you mean by avoid the self-promotion?
So, like I said, a reporter is not going to write a company profile piece. So you need to make sure that you're not sending them an email that's like, look how great my company is, look how great I am. It instead needs to actually be insightful and offer them insight into something that's potentially happening in the industry that they care about. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. And that's for all of these publications that we're going to talk about. Something like a TechCrunch or a Wired. If you are getting an investment, yes, that's the perfect time to reach out and say, we're awesome, we just got this great investment, look at all of our growth, that kind of thing. But if you don't have something like that, they're going to want to tie it to a trend. We actually were talking with somebody from TechCrunch today and got a little promotional, and she was like, all right, but what's the story? So they're going to ask you to tie it to something bigger. So when you're thinking about tech media, you could consider something called advance notice. And I know it's confusing, but that's not the same as an exclusive. We actually call this an embargo. And so you reach out to a number of publications and you let them know that they can share this information at a set point in time. That gives them, you might reach out a day or two before, gives them time to work on their article, get all their sources together, and then let's say it's 9 a.m. on a Thursday, all those articles go live at 9 a.m. Eastern time on a Thursday. It can be a risky gamble. You have some reporters who don't care and they'll just write it anyways and risk losing a relationship with you. But it is nice if you have a good relationship with a few reporters and you want to kind of have like a wide push. And in particular, tech media are used to that and comfortable if you ever reach out and want to do that. If you're going to go after a TechCrunch or a Wired, be prepared to open the books. They're going to want to know the amount raised, the number of employees, growth metrics, and you can get creative with that to some extent. You know, for a lot of people, will use percentages and things like that. But you could have some reporters who want to know actual revenue numbers. And so if you're not comfortable sharing that, there's something to be mindful of. Again, they're going to want to know your brand value, what's your differentiation, what makes you different from your competitors. Think like your investor. What do they want to know? What's the information that's going to make them want to invest in a company like yours? And obviously, this is going to go across the board. Any use cases or customers that you can share are extremely beneficial to these publications. So trade media is a huge bucket. It's not the sexiest of publications, but I've had lots of organizations where I've been able to get them in the Wall Street Journal or on Fox Business Network, but what really they wanted to be in the trade media that their customers were reading the most. And these publications too, there's something out there for everyone. I worked with a physical security provider and they worked with a lot of franchises and we got them an opportunity in a publication called Pizza Today. I'm not kidding. And it was written for pizza franchise owners and they were thrilled because, you know, those people need physical security solutions. So anything you can think of, just do some Googling and there's probably a publication out there that covers those specific sectors. So these are, I think, probably being hit the most with the newsrooms dwindling. So in particular, this bullet here is very important. So these are the publications. You might go to them with a pitch and have a great topic that you think that they can talk about. And they're going to say, I love it, but can you write an article on it? Because they just are physically tapped and cannot do an interview and pull an article together themselves. So that's something to keep in mind here. If you do get something like that, they're going to share specifics, you know, word count, all that good stuff, a deadline, and making sure that it's vendor neutral. For the most part, it cannot talk about your product. You can talk about things generally happening in the industry, but just make sure that you're not referencing your own products or services. The thing that you get out of a vendor neutral contributed piece of content is your byline at the end and the link to your company website. These publications have what's called an editorial calendar. If you visit the advertising page of their site and then go to their media kit, they actually have outlined what they're planning to cover for the full year. So you can take a look at that. Themes that they'll have on there, and then you can reach out to any editors or writers that you might have relationships with and just ask them what they're planning to cover on that and if you can provide any insight. It's a really great way to get in because they really do go by the editorial calendar. And again, these publications, they love their data. That's actually one way to get them to write an article on their own, actually offer them data or a customer case study. If you don't have that, they're going to probably ask you for a contributed article.
I had a question just on the general strategy for that. So is kind of the strategy that you coach a lot of your people on is to kind of pose yourself, like let's say you're doing something, just let's say AI related, in maybe an older industry like, you know, automotive or commercial real estate. Would you coach them through like kind of putting content out there that would basically pose you as an expert in this new technology or this new innovation and then use that as more of like it's a little bit softer? Because it seems like there might be a disconnect between, you know, if you have a valuable technology for that industry, how do you kind of generate the interest from those kind of, you know, CEOs if you're looking for an acquisition or something like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You want to, that's the whole thought leadership angle. It's I'm an expert and I can talk about what's happening in this industry, where I see it heading, and kind of predictions, and less focused on like your specific product. Is that what you were asking?
I think you answered it, yes. It sounds like your the approach is more to pose yourself as an expert or thought leader, and through that, people will come to you and want your insight, and that allows a pitching opportunity for you to talk about general trends, but then specifically how your
Go
product
into
fits
it.
in there. Is that kind of
Yep.
the approach? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if you reach out to these publications, in particular, we have a lot of retail tech clients. So a lot of those retail publications are just constantly asking for bylines. And we're able to just like constantly pepper them in. And so those companies are just having a constant drumbeat of opportunities. And we recently had one get acquired, and the company that acquired them said that they haven't seen in media like opportunities like that, the thought leadership campaign. That was a key reason why they wanted to acquire the company. So it definitely has an impact.
Yeah, would you also say that maybe a minute ago you mentioned that a lot of times they don't have the staffing to really build out their own articles in-house and stuff? Do you think that provides for a really good opportunity to step in if you can manage the resources to just dedicate the time or collaborate with someone to get a piece out, because you have a lot more maybe influence over that content versus someone like a New York Times or Wall Street Journal?
Yeah, it's really nice. So if we go back to our 3 pieces of types of content, we would actually put the vendor neutral contributed content as the high profile piece, because it's completely focused on what you want to talk about. You can completely control the message. Besides, just don't be promotional.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Just a quick question. How do you translate it, for example, like medical researchers, engineers who are more familiar with peer-reviewed journals? They know how to write articles for that, but they don't know how to talk to the media.
It's a different strategy for sure.
Yeah, how do you translate all these, like, the great knowledge of the team and people are very interested in to media coverage without losing too much of the actual explanation?
Yeah, I think it just takes somebody to be able to listen to a highly technical concept or something that's very deep, I would say. And you need to have somebody who can take that and be able to put it into layman's terms. I've had so many conversations with software engineers, and they've explained things to me, and I'm like, wait, what? But if you find somebody who can do that and really look at the piece of content with that in mind, you certainly can pull things from research that you've done and be able to tailor it to these type of publications.
Something I could even suggest is I know that there's kind of a subsection of a lot of the technical, it's called technical writing, and a lot of times they'll have technical writers that for Westinghouse or GE, they have whole departments that do what you're talking about. But I'm sure that you'd be able to find someone that's like a freelance technical writer, probably even in your niche. Like if you're doing radiology or something, I'm sure there's someone that does radiological technical writing. I don't know where you find them, but I'm sure they're out there. So.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
A tool that I've started using too that might be helpful, you could take something that you wrote and run it through it. It's called Grammarly. I'm not sure if you've heard of that. But you can put things in and say what level of technicality you want the article to be. So you could put what you wrote and say you wanted it to be more general, and it would help you ease through it to make it not so technical. And it actually really is helpful, because I use it on the other end. I take things that I write that are maybe a little more general and need to be a bit more technical, and it helps me to work through that. It actually is a really good tool.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, consumer media is a whole nother bear. So I think the biggest thing with this is consumer media takes a ton of time. They think about how many products and things that touch consumers' lives that these people are having to sift through to find what's compelling to their audiences. So remember, it takes time, and also remember that they're working 6 months out. So right now, the publications are working on things for their summer issues. So if you want to get something in a CNET or a Refinery 29, something like that's really speaking to consumers, make sure you're thinking at least 6 months out. And then this is where if you have a product or something, they love that. Send it to them. Give them an opportunity to test it, demo it for themselves. Obviously, that puts you up for risk, so make sure that you're willing to back up whatever you're sending and you feel really good about it. But they like the samples and any specific materials. In particular, visuals go really well with consumer media, so make sure that you have something that you can share with that whenever you're pitching those publications. And then local media. So I tailored this to Pittsburgh because that's where we are, but this is basically the same across the board. They're obviously going to be looking for a strong local tie. What are you bringing to the area here? Are you bringing in hires? Are you adding a new headquarters? Things like that. They love the local customer stories, but customers in general are great. And you really want to make sure that you're tailoring it to what you're bringing to the community. And these publications, they're not going to be looking for a byline, so make sure you're open to having a conversation with them. If you are targeting somebody in the Pittsburgh market, it's a really small media market here. You definitely can make great relationships with people. Sit down with them over coffee, let them get to know you and what you can talk about. And I think you'll be surprised at how often they're able to use you. And Pittsburgh media in particular, they'll write those company profile pieces of you. So remember some of the things that we talked about before. If they're going to write a company profile piece, they might want to talk a little bit about growth, so you might have to share some numbers. But these are nice friendlies to go after and start to introduce yourself. Just ask them for some coffee and start to build some relationships. All right. So these are some helpful free resources that can get you started. We should have put Grammarly on here. That could help. So help a reporter out. This is a huge one. This is something that we use. It's a free resource. And reporters will actually go on here and post queries of what they're hoping to cover and the type of sources they're looking to talk to. So literally there could be a reporter on there from USA Today that's like, I'm writing an article on AI and I want to speak to somebody who works with AI in the healthcare industry. And they will put their email and you can reach out to them and they might get in contact with you, they might not. It's an easy way to get in front of opportunities, low-hanging fruit, because these people are actively searching for whatever they're putting on there. Talkwalker, Google Alerts, those are good ways to keep track of what your reporters are writing. Set up searches for their names so you can follow up. If you see an article that's something that you could have commented on, send them, hey, saw that article that you wrote today, it was really interesting. Did you also think about this, this, and this? That's another great way to pitch people. Also just to keep track of yourself and any coverage that you get in case you haven't heard of Talkwalker, it's awesome. I find that it finds more things than Google Alerts. HypeStat is a good way to track the amount of views that a particular publication is getting. Hunter.io is literally, I feel like I use it all day. You can get an actual Chrome extension for that, put it on, go to a specific website, click the Chrome extension, and it'll tell you the way the emails are formatted and even list some of the ones, so you might be able to find the specific contact that you're looking for, because finding reporter emails can be really hard. That's also great for sales too, if you're looking to reach out to people within specific companies. Yeah, it's really helpful. Twitter lists are awesome. So once you guys have identified your specific people that you're looking to target within publications, put them all on a list and you can keep track of what they have going on, what they're writing about. You might be able to see in the list that they had a family crisis that came up and they're not working right now, in which case you wouldn't want to reach out, and whenever they're back you can say, oh, I saw on Twitter that this happened, hope everything's okay. Just adds a little bit of a more personable layer. And then lastly, we have a bunch of how-to guides for PR 101, social media primers, all kinds of stuff at this site here. I'm going to make sure I share the deck with Allison so she has it, so you guys will have all of these. But that was everything that I was hoping to cover off on. Any other questions? No?
Thanks for coming.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.